Welcome back to Climate Change Perspectives. Water is becoming a scarcer resource across the globe and more particularly in Africa. The impacts of climate change are exacerbating an already dire situation. Many predict that access to water will be the biggest source of conflict between communities and between nations unless drastic action is taken to address the issue of water. Water being a very important resource for Coca-Cola. We now have in studio Bill Egbe, the president of Coca-Cola South Africa. Thank you so much, Bill, for joining us. Great to have you in studio. And of course, Daniel Kinnear from the Africa Strategy Group still with us. Bill, let's start off with climate change and whether it is top of the agenda for Coca-Cola. The fact that COP17 is underway, and I know that you actually went to Durban for a session.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, climate change is something that's quite topical for all of business currently in South Africa. But I think globally also, we do recognize that climate change is going to have a long-term impact on our business, either directly or indirectly. And it will also eventually impact our supply chain. So we're quite interested in what is going on in COP17. I was just down there a couple of days ago participating in the WBCSD day at the event. And I have to say there's a lot of energy in the business community around getting involved in the debates around COP17.
Some say that energy is sometimes not enough, that we actually need to see action happening. Is there enough energy so that we do see all of the conversations that occurred during COP17 then come to fruition?
No, absolutely. I think there's a strong commitment from the business community, and I believe that the big players in the business community have been very active leading up to COP17 in terms of rallying their colleagues to identify the participation, the kind of contribution that we could make to developing a framework for COP17 that will enable business to inject the ideas that they have about being able to impact climate change. There are a lot of things that companies are doing. We ourselves do a lot of things in the areas of water, energy, refrigeration, packaging, all of these things that are directed towards alleviating some of the pressures that come from climate change. And so we want to be part of finding the solution.
I'd imagine that Coca-Cola probably has, of any business on this planet, the biggest footprint of businesses across Africa, probably a major employer through direct, formal or informal, and water being at the cornerstone of your whole production, of your whole product. How have you dealt with the issue of the scarcity of water? We
have a very simple goal. We have an ambition that says that we would like to be able to return to nature an amount of water equivalent to the water that we use in all of our products and in our production processes. And that's our goal, to be able to achieve that by 2020. So under that premise, we've been very active in trying to find solutions that will help us not only reduce the level of water we use in producing our products, but also supporting water conservation initiatives and water access projects across Africa. In fact, in 2009, we globally launched an initiative called Replenish Africa Initiative, linked to the understanding that business has a role to play towards achieving the Millennium Development Goals. And there, the Coca-Cola Company pledged $30 million over a 6-year period to help provide access to 2 million Africans to safe drinking water. And so the commitment is there, and we're actively involved in those kinds of initiatives. And here in South Africa, specifically last year, around the 2010 FIFA World Cup, one of our key legacy projects around the 2010 FIFA World Cup was around helping the Department of Basic Education provide access to clean and safe drinking water in 100 schools across South Africa. So we're actively involved at different levels, either access to water or water conservation, to try to drive solutions towards this challenge that we're facing.
Bill, with regards to water recycling, give us an indication of how intricate the scenario is on the African continent.
Well, I think a couple of things. Business has to be very pragmatic. One is that what the Coca-Cola Company does, when we go to a location to try to establish a new plant, we have to make sure that we have a proper assessment of how vulnerable the sources of water for that area are. And that enables us to be able to design a manufacturing facility that can deal with the level of water available in that area. But we're very conscious of the fact that in our production processes, it's critical for us to minimize the amount of wastewater we generate. For example, we started an initiative about 5 years ago that targeted to ensure that all of our production plants had 100% wastewater treatment in those facilities. I can tell you that by the end of this year, globally, with over 1,000 manufacturing facilities, we're going to have about 96% of our facilities already meeting that aim. So these are very concrete initiatives that talk about the company being aware of the fact that recycling is critical in helping minimize the pressure that we have on these water sources across the continent. We believe that if everybody has these kind of community-wise initiatives that help create the balance between the pressures that come from production and the needs of the communities, we'll be able to manage through this crisis very effectively.
But talking to recycling, besides recycling water and putting that back into its original sources, all your products at some stage or the other go into packaging.
Yes, indeed.
I mean, do you extend your business process to the recycling at the packaging level? And what percentage of your packaging are you recycling at the moment in South Africa, for example?
First of all, you have to start from the premise that the majority of our packaging material is recyclable. And then we are quite keen to ensure that we can work within the local environment to increase our capacity as an industry to recycle our packaging material. For example, in South Africa, years ago, we were one of the founding members of Collector Can. Collector Can now has one of the highest recycling rates globally. In South Africa, more than 70% of cans that are used for beverages are being recycled, more than double the rate in the US. And that has happened because we've been able to partner with like-minded companies, create an entity that would actually actively go out there, recover, and recycle the discarded can material.
Give us some numbers here when you're talking about recycling of packaging, an indication of what is produced and then what is brought back for recycling purposes.
For example, in cans, you may not realize, but 40 to 60% of the material in every new aluminum can is recycled. So because it's an extensive process of collecting, cleaning, and reintroduces this packaging into the manufacturing process, I think the key thing there is that in that process, you're not only reducing greenhouse gas emissions, you're reducing waste in the landfills, and you're able to produce this new material at a lower cost than the original steel or steel or aluminum material that you use in cans. So on so many different dimensions, you're able to generate benefits for the environment and for the climate.
I think in doing our research for this program, we also, when one looks at recycling of water, recycling of packaging, but also the energy to drive the business.
Yes.
There was a significant investment made in South Africa probably 8 months ago on a completely renewable energy model out in, I think it's Heidelberg.
Exactly. Yeah, about 6 months ago, we opened a new manufacturing plant for evaporative spring water in Heidelberg. And this is quite a unique facility because, again, we're quite focused on our ambition to be able to look at packaging as a zero-waste manufacturing challenge. So the idea is that if you can get your packaging to generate zero waste, which means that what you use to provide packaging to consumers, you can recycle and reuse, then you're very keen to be able to achieve that. Now in Heidelberg, what we're able to do was combine a variety of factors. One is to build a plant that was very energy efficient, leveraging the use of solar energy and natural lighting within the facility, but also a plant that generates zero waste to landfill, being quite focused on ensuring that all of the waste that you generate, you can recycle and reuse in some manner. And there's another unique angle in the Heidelberg facility. We were able also to be the first plant on the continent that is LEED certified. Our office facilities have been LEED certified. We're months away from being able to get LEED certification at the gold level for our production facilities. That is quite unique for Africa, and that reflects the fact that even in Africa, businesses are conscious of the fact that it may require us to invest a little bit more, but it's worthwhile making those investments that are environmentally friendly and that are appropriate in terms of a contribution towards dealing with the challenges of climate change in the long term.
Are you planning to roll this out on the rest of the African continent?
Absolutely. Our company is quite focused on the things that we need to do to contribute towards finding solutions for the climate change challenges. And ideas like what we've implemented in Heidelberg are a blueprint for what we can do elsewhere on the continent.
What's also fascinating, and if you look at the whole notion of climate change, just being at COP17, very reluctant to give out bottled water purely because of the footprint.
Yes.
Is there any indication that Coca-Cola would rethink bottled water?
Well, I think the entire concept behind bottled water is the fact that people can get tap water, but they look at bottled water for convenience. And that's the context within which bottled water fits. It's never, the idea was never that bottled water will replace all other ways of conveying water to consumers. But I think to the extent that consumers, in certain occasions, in certain parts of their daily life, do want the convenience of water while they're on the go, I think the need for bottled water is going to be there for a while. The key thing for us is to make sure that in the production of that bottled water, we do our very best to ensure that we can minimize the climate footprint that we create in producing that product. And that goes to talking about optimizing our production processes, making them energy efficient, but also ensuring that our packaging is optimized, be it lightweight and recyclable. And in fact, in the case of Heidelberg, we introduced an innovation around bottled water, which was around making sure that not only is the packaging recyclable, but that part of the input into the packaging is renewable material, the plant bottle. So 30% of the material going into that PET package is from renewable sources. And that's a massive innovation introduced by the Coca-Cola company. And globally this year, there's going to be almost 5 billion bottles of water sold that contain plant bottle material.
And I mean, I think the issue also is the downstream benefits where business look at the environment and climate as a sustainable model. It makes business sense. Just going back, if I may, to COP and the meetings you attended, the World Business Council on Sustainable Development, did you find that business is recognizing more and more that it's important to address the issue of climate change as a business imperative?
I believe so. I think if you look at the way companies like ourselves operate, in the Coca-Cola company, we know that sustainability is an integral part of all of the fundamental business plans that we use to drive our business. It is a requirement to ensure that our businesses are viable in the long term. So it's an integral part of everything that we do. Within that context, I think most businesses do realize that they have to ensure that they are part of creating the solutions that would enable the world to deal with climate change. We don't want to be on the sidelines, we want to be at the table to be part of the dialogue, not only of shaping the regulatory frameworks, but also of providing solutions. We have access to technology, we have resources, human capacity to tackle those problems, and also we provide the vehicle to deliver the solutions to the public. So we believe that business has a critical role to play, and we want to encourage the public sector to always ensure that we're given an appropriate seat at the table, because we're committed to being part of finding the solution.